how do you perceive it if you are essentially using the software from what is a competitive business to you?
Well, hang on. Firstly, it's my podcast. I ask the questions.
Sorry.
No.
Hey, this is Mark Asquith, CEO and co-founder at Rebel Base Media, the UK podcasting experts. Maybe you're thinking to yourself, it's time that I started my own podcast. Because as we know, podcasting is a wonderful way to build audience engagement, a wonderful way to interact and connect with your audience, and it's a wonderful way to build your business. Well, you can get started with your own podcast today for just £1 by checking out Captivate.fm, the world's only growth-oriented podcast hosting company, analytics platform, and distribution centre. Go and start podcasting today for just £1 at Captivate.fm.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Marketed Not Live, the podcast for marketers who are looking to their own community to find out what's working now and, importantly, what is around that corner. In every episode, we'll bring you a guest to talk about a specific marketing topic that will help you broaden your horizon. So whether you're into SEO, because there are a few of you out there, or maybe you're in social media, maybe you focus on customer experience, who knows? You need to get outside of that great big bubble and learn how all of these things fit together. And that's what we do at Marketed Live, and that's what we do at the podcast as well. So we've had some great guests lined up over this season, and we've got a couple more as well, including speakers from this year's Marketed Live. And that takes place, as you know by now, on Monday, the 30th of September 2019. 2 weeks, in fact, at the magnificent Nottingham Contemporary. It would be fantastic if we had you there too. So make sure you check out marketed.live online. Get your hands on one of the remaining tickets. Just a few left now, because we really want to see you there. Now, today's guest is someone that I have come to know very well over the last few years. He's someone that has a background in building SaaS businesses. Andy Lambert is one of the founding team at ContentCal, a content marketing software platform who in 2.5 years are now used by more than 20,000 businesses in 140 countries. And it includes their user base, people like the NHS, BMW, Expedia. We're talking big names here. And us as well. We do actually use it ourselves. And I have to say, just from a personal capacity, I know I've said this when I have done a little bit of work with them in terms of case studies and testimonials, but it has changed how we do things. So I'm really pleased that Andy is going to join us today. Welcome to the podcast, Andy.
Hey, Paul. Absolute pleasure to be on.
I've got loads of questions that I want to ask you, because I think what you've managed to do with ContentCal and the history of that and where it's come from is really interesting. So tell us a bit more about that. You started as a marketing agency, right? How did you get to going from a marketing agency to ContentCal?
With a lot of pain, basically. So we could probably talk for hours about the journey of going from an agency to a software business, going from like a retainer / project driven business to something that's driven off recurring revenue. A massive change. Has been very painful at times, and also is very horrible for your cash flow, because if you think, when you're an agency, as you well know, as you run a great one yourself, you're taking money up front, you're doing the project, you're agreeing retainers, you hire the staff to deliver the work. And that's fine from an agency perspective, but when you shift to a software model, you've got all of that upfront cost of building a software product before you even make your first 10 quid a month, if you're lucky, in recurring subscription revenues. And only after a number of months and years do you start to see the fruits of your labor. So incredibly expensive. So it then started us off onto a completely different trajectory, which is like raising seed investment, working with venture capitalists and that kind of thing, of which, that would have been completely alien to us from running an agency.
So how did you did you get to that point then? So you're running a successful agency. I'm going to assume it was successful, and it wasn't. You didn't form the decision based on some kind of catastrophic event where you went, we're not very good at this. So you're running an agency, and you're doing what a lot of people who might listen to this podcast do. They're creating content themselves. They're liaising with clients. They're doing all of that stuff. What caused you to go, do you know what? We need to create a thing, whatever that is.
Great question. So I'm going to bring in the original founder, because I'm on the founding teams, but I can't be credited with the idea. That's Alex, who you know, so Alex Peckham. So the very, very short story here is Alex ran social media for Now TV, obviously part of Sky.
Okay.
Quit his job, like most people do when they do social media management for large businesses. They end up, quitting, then going freelance, building an agency. So Alex quit his job in 2014, created just an agency of him doing work. And he had this idea for Content Cal and got an organization in Russia to mock it up, basically, for what we call sweat equity.
Right,
so
okay.
basically, cheap development resource, give them a little bit of the company. At that point, it's not worth anything, really. It's just an idea. Build it for free, but if it starts to take off, then they've got a bit of equity in it. So that's the first thing to bring it to life. And Alex did a great thing with getting Now TV, because this is the situation. This is what Alex always had in his mind, is that when he left Now TV, he knew he was going to start an agency, but the way he was managing content in Now TV was through something that you'll be very familiar, and I'm sure a few listeners will be familiar with, is that they were managing their content plan, their content calendar on a spreadsheet, right? So sending it through all of their team to get approval. They tried to copy and paste all of the images for the different shows that they're going to be promoting as part of their social media schedule for Now TV. Either way, it turned into one massive color-coded mess. So Alex was like, there's definitely got to be a better way for that. So mocked up some designs, as I said, got introduced to a team in Russia to kind of build what you'd call a MVP, minimum viable product. Mm-hmm. And at that point, because my background's been in software, at that point I got involved and thought, actually, you know what, there's probably a bit of mileage in this. And, we ended up shaping it a little bit and starting to get this out to a broader market. So all at the same time, we were running the agency because we needed to keep the agency going from a cash.
Yeah.
Like the software was just kind of a bit of what we did. But if anyone's running an agency and looking at doing the software piece, I think the most important thing we did was give that software side room to breathe and a dedicated team to deal with it. So rather than it being, just something that someone like Alex, for example, kind of took myself and Lawrence, who runs product, and we just kind of built the Content Cal software and built the market around it, whilst we had other members of the team, like being account managers and creatives within the agency, basically separated that into two individual businesses that sat in the same office. So
it wasn't like a side hustle, in other words. It was like, we're going to do this. This is what's needed. Here's the business case. This is like the predicted cost. We're going to put this number of people on it, and that's going to run separate to the agency, right?
Yeah, it basically got serious right away. So if we're going to do this, we're going to do this big, and we're going to raise investment, and we believe that this is a good idea. Early kind of conversations with customers, not just Now TV, who are a bit of a beta pilot with it, but early customers were all telling us that actually, there's mileage in this. They all felt the same pain. So there's definitely something here. So
that's a major decision to make, to kind of go, right. I mean, it is like starting a new business. So how did the agency function? Was it just absolutely the same at that point, with maybe a little bit of time taken from Alex in terms of direction, but the agency was running the same? And at what point did you guys decide that, well, we'll run down the number of clients and put more energy into the product?
So that wasn't the decision that we took until this year. So it's actually been 2 and a bit years now of running that agency, and only this year we said, you know what, it's time to kind of segment that and move it aside and essentially not run it down, but find a different place for it, in the sense that we're not going to grow that anymore. That's not the primary focus.
Okay. So you didn't set out to drop clients then? That's been running until that point?
Yeah, it's been running to that point. The cash flow once you start raising money from investors, the cash flow from the agency clients, whilst I won't tell, the complete metrics of our business, an average agency client is going to be worth more than 30 grand per year to you, something like that. Mm-hmm. Whereas an average customer of our software is going to be worth somewhere between 500 to £1,000 a year. So you start to drop the 30 grand a year type of customers, suddenly your cash flow looks much worse. And and then your business case to investors doesn't look quite as good off the back of that. So we've always, and that's been one of our major challenges, because in an ideal world, we would have gone, right, okay, raised a bunch of investment, we got great traction on the software side, we're all in. Because running an agency and a software business means that the agency actually burns a lot of time. You burn through kind of resource, clients need to be replenished. And, you need to do great work for your clients. So you can't really take your eye off the ball too much. And that then in turn means that there isn't as much focus, even though it's got separate teams, the energies are still split. So that's always been a real challenge, but carry on.
That's like a mindset thing though, right? So that's like a complete change of mindset, going from big clients, smaller numbers, to transactions, like online sales, or probably not online sales to begin with, because you've got to convince people that it's a thing, right? But the objective of a SaaS-based business is that you've got your website and your marketing and your advertising campaign and doing things like coming to MarketEd Live and doing the expos, but it's numbers. So that's volume, yeah?
Yeah, exactly.
That's a different mindset. That's a different way to sell. How do you have different teams for both of those, or do you, in terms of marketing, so that there is no crossover of mindset or crossover of things, or do people work with the agency and with Content Cow?
Well, that's been the question in the sense that for the last 2 years, we've had resource split between both, marketing resource split between the both, and sales resource. And if I'm completely honest, that has not worked at all. Because ultimately, as you've correctly identified, you're talking about two completely different business models. Yes, there is some overlap. And that's always been the challenge, in the sense that, yes, we got thousands of people using our software product, and I'm sure lots of them potentially need social media help. But realistically, when you're trying to try and make that business model work, it requires quite a lot of sales resource to be able to, to go to each of these, thousands of customers and, introduce them to the proposition of, potential agency services. But then again, whilst we thought about that from a revenue perspective, it might be attractive, we would still need to, still deal with the same agency-led challenges, which is you need to hire people to deliver the work. When agency customers potentially in-house their activities after a couple of years of us, that revenue needs to be replenished. So all of that becomes it's basically a very difficult treadmill to get off. Because we're addicted to the cash flow. We need it because it's in our business plan and our growth forecasts, and, investors get jitters when they suddenly see, 30 grand.
I completely understand. I mean, anyone who knows my backstory knows that I've gone the other way. So I started off with a piece of technology, and then moved from that to agency, because it, hats off to you. It is bloody difficult to do something like this. And in the case of what we were doing, it just didn't work. But just thinking about the marketing element of what you guys did in that story, because I want to move on to looking at content for a sec. But you don't talk about that you've got agency experience, or I mean, I'm literally just looking at your website just in case I've missed it, but you don't kind of use your agency experience in your marketing to say, well, look, this is our story. We were an agency and we understand the trials and tribulations of creating all of this content. Why is that?
That's a great question. I have that question quite a lot. I've always been really nervous to use that, especially as, I said, we're now kind of winding down that agency side of things. We've finally got to that level. But all the time that we had that agency in the background, what I wanted to avoid is any potential conflict of interest, because we're focused on software, right? And what I didn't want to do is for, a huge amount of agencies that use us, you being one of them, I always was nervous about the fact that how would you, as a customer who is an agency, how would you perceive the fact that we are an agency too, which essentially is a competitive business, but yet you're using our software? I did get a question from a number of people. It wasn't as much of an issue as I thought it was. Often with these things, you tend to think they're more significant in your own mind. So that's kind of been the thing that's made our kind of marketing not focus on our agency experience at all. And now we're kind of going full circle as we're reviewing a lot of what we've got going on at the moment. The life in marketing, it's constant review. So we're going to be bringing that message back more. Okay. So I'm interested in your thoughts though, because I've never really asked you about this, about like how do you perceive it if you are essentially using the software from what is a competitive business to you?
Well, hang on. Firstly, it's my podcast. I ask the questions.
Sorry. No. I'm taking over.
No, it's fine. Well, it's an interesting one because I think it's partly to do with confidence, if I'm being honest. I think for me, actually, having an understanding that you understand what my issues are gives me confidence that you're creating a product that is suitable for my type of business. So I don't see it as threatening that you have some clients. Now, I also think that you're not a threat because of maybe differences in size, geography, location. We're in the Midlands, you're in London. So there's lots of reasons why I don't feel threatened by that at all. But I do look at, well, what's the background here? How do they know? And the thing, without this trying to be an advert for Content Cal, the reason that I use it is because it does fit what I need it to do for my business perfectly. So that's why that fit is there. So for me, it doesn't matter. It kind of adds a bit of credibility, but I do understand that some people might go, well, hang on a second. And I tell you why that is similar. It's a bit similar to running an event. So, we run an event, obviously, Marketed Live, where we would like our competition, in inverted commas, to come to the event because it would be useful for them. Now, I know that there are some agencies that won't come to Marketed Live because it's our event. Mm. I know that because I've heard that or someone said that to me. I just think it's a bit backward, if I'm being honest, because I think these days there's almost two types of business or two types of agency. One is very traditional, stuck in old ways of doing things, not very collaborative, sees everyone as a threat, sees everybody as competition, wants to kill everybody. And then there's others that are more modern, I think, more collaborative, are happy to work together, look at different skills and go, okay, well, you're an expert in video, we're an expert in writing, let's do something together. So I think it depends. So I do understand that, but I just thought it was interesting to see what you say there. Right, let's get back to me asking the questions. Let's talk about content creation, because this product that you've created is all about creating content and scheduling. When you talk to people, whether it's agencies, freelancers, or whoever your potential customers are, what do you hear are the current challenges in creating content at the moment?
Two things I would say, but the most important one and the most frequent one we hear is, I don't know what to post. What do I need to do? And this is a really common challenge, because you mentioned at the start that we have lots of big names using us, which is obviously great and it sounds glamorous, but 86% of our customers have less than 11 employees. So between 1 and 10, right? So it's a hugely SME focus or SMB focused business. And in that space, the people that are using our product are either owner proprietors, or they are a marketer within the business that has an enormous amount of responsibility outside of doing social media content.
Right.
So in amongst that, the biggest challenge that we see is people just don't know what to do. Now, there's obviously events like yours to help inspire people and that kind of thing. And I mean, we've seen the same with our kind of fellow software products that do slightly different things, like email marketing. A lot of those founders of those kind of businesses will say the same challenge, because right, it's all about knowing what to say and how to address your customer base. People find it really nerve-wracking when they get into Content Cal and they see a blank space, obviously a beautifully designed product, but ultimately a blank calendar of like, okay, so what am I going to say to my audience? And I can publish this to 100 different places, but what am I going to say? And that's definitely the biggest barrier. That then, and a kind of a secondary barrier to that, is about having the creative ability. Right. So there are lots of apps out there to aid this, but like how do you create a live video that looks good? And then how do you broadcast that to multiple places? Rather than just doing a Facebook Live, how can you, stream it to multiple places at the same time? Because lots of people aren't familiar with that's, there's platforms out there to do that.
Yeah.
Or, how can I take a bunch of different images on my phone and make it into a kind of nice little video and annotate it really quickly with a really nice, and albeit in most cases, free app. So there's just loads of tools and resources out there to make life easy, but it goes back to the, point A that I was just mentioning. It's about education, really. Obviously, MarketEd Live's a great place for that. But
that's right. Well done.
I have to get it in. But it's difficult, because where the challenge that we find is that that education isn't an issue with a lot of the people that are real kind of big users of Content Cal, which is obviously a lot of them are agencies, a lot of them big businesses, or like small mid-sized businesses. They know what they're doing in the main, don't have any issues. They've got strategies written and all that kind of stuff. They know what they're doing. But from a small business perspective, really quite difficult for these people to really know what they need to do. And having the actionable, because they'll actually know the kind of general gist of what they need to do, but they kind of miss the real actionable stuff that they need to say, all right, you need to say these kind of things. These are the type of posts you should be publishing, or type of ideas or concepts that you could be doing. And here are some tools to help you bring it to life. And that's the challenge that we're really trying to solve for at the moment.
So do you think some of it is to do with thinking about almost like, do you think the challenge is something like being able to understand the basics of marketing, not necessarily the format? So we all perhaps know that, maybe video is working very well on social media, and that maybe we should be doing video, maybe we should be doing live video. But what is the essence of the content within it? So are we doing an awareness piece, or are we doing something with a specific call to action, or are we trying to drive people towards the website? What is the purpose? I just wonder whether sometimes we might be told, we should be doing these things, or we must create this type of thing, but we don't necessarily know why.
Exactly. A lot of the focus around, there's really two types of kind of key education I see, which is also, I think is quite misleading. So there's the stuff that is really big and glossy and makes people potentially inspired to do something. This is the possibility of social media. This is what happens when something goes viral, or when you work with an incredible brand. These are the things that can happen. But the difficulty, and I 100% agree with you, is like when you're in the trenches in a small business or any size business really, but let's think about small ones for now, where you've got a myriad of other tasks you need to complete on that day, very little understanding of potentially very little of understanding of the overarching what your marketing strategy might be and what the distribution strategy looks like. You've got education that kind of tells you that social media is great, as you say. You should do video, you should launch a podcast, make sure you're on YouTube. All of that stuff is really disorientating, because people just end up freezing because you're like a rabbit in the headlights. I don't know what to do. And social media is, if I had to describe it in one word, is overwhelming.
It's kind of the worst for that, isn't it? It's like properly, like social media is like the worst. There's so much stuff out there. Do you think actually the fact that there's so much stuff out there and that there's so much guff that doesn't really do anything or doesn't really have an effect, like almost self-perpetuates that there's so much rubbish or noise out there that people end up creating more and more noise without going, right, hang on a second, what do we do here? How are we going to stand out a bit? How are we going to do something that's slightly different?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So that's the key thing, and there's a lot of pressure within the space as well. So overwhelming, lots of things you could do, lots of different noise, lots of should do this, you should be here, you should be there. But really, for someone who's potentially not seen the success so far, either in a small business or taking their first steps into this, simple is best. It is, everything's always about the message. So if your kind of creative is good, your strategy's aligned. So, are we building brand awareness? Are we looking to potentially grow our followers on a particular platform? Or are we looking to drive traffic to a certain landing page we've created for a new product we're launching? As long as your strategy makes sense and what you're looking to achieve makes sense, then the ultimate, like the channels and distribution, don't matter as much as the content itself. So when the content's right, then you've got a bunch of different tools to bring that to life. As I was saying earlier, like tools to help you create video, or do email marketing, or a tool like ours to help you send your message to multiple different locations at once. That's all fine. That's great. But it goes back to the planning element, and this is something we lean on quite heavily at Content Cal as a bit of a differentiator. So, it's all about the quality of the output is dependent on the quality of the input. So as long as your strategy makes sense, and then the overarching kind of creative theme of what you're looking to do, you think actually, this is a goer. Maybe test between a couple, but nothing else really matters so much as the top bit. And I think that's the bit that's often missed from a lot of the education, because the education ends up, or the recommendations from a lot of people is format driven.
Yeah, I agree actually there. It's like, you need to have purpose first. What's the purpose? Like you say, what's the strategy? What's the objective here? Let's work from that. And the mechanics are separate. The mechanics is just about implementing what the purpose is. Okay, so where do you see that going then in the future? What does the future of content look like to you?
Scary. So there's a couple of ways of answering this. So firstly, the reason I say scary is because I was having this conversation yesterday with someone in a similar space to us, talking about the latest moves at Facebook and Instagram, and does anyone get wind of what they're doing before anyone else? Which is probably no. So,
I was going to say, what's the answer there? No.
Yeah. And it's a real challenge when something's constantly moving, to kind of, not only for us building a business around it, but for anyone that's actually publishing content there, is on a daily basis, they'll wake up and realize that the game has changed slightly. And that's really, really hard. Mm-hmm. That being said, the thing that I'm really keen on at the moment, and the more future around content, is that we've got onto a bit of a hamster wheel at the moment, which is churning out a mass amount of content. Like there seems to be some wisdom somewhere that you need to do 3 posts per week on on Facebook, 2 a day on Twitter. All of that, pardon my French, is bollocks, right? So as far as I'm concerned, it's less about like the distribution right now, and just saying I want to put out like this many posts and should be on these platforms. The real beauty is going to be in content repurposing. And this is where, businesses, certainly smaller businesses, will be able to thrive, in the sense that, we're creating a podcast right now, but repurposing that podcast and thinking about this in as many different places as possible, chopping that up into sound bites for social, chopping this up into, the transcript should go on Medium, for example, being able to package this up. We could be doing this over video too, and, do this as a webinar, for example, as well, chuck that on YouTube. So it's easy to be on multiple formats if you think about the whole notion of what we call like create once and publish everywhere, COPE, C-O-P-E. So, and I think that's something that we're quite keen on prosecuting this argument, because, the lifespan of a piece of content is so small. People spend so much time creating that stuff, and the vast majority of it does not get read. That's just not a sustainable way forward.
Oh, that's that. Do you know what? I think you're right, actually. There, I mean, it's interesting because there's a lot of businesses that I see, or people doing a lot more about repurposing content, and that does kind of. I understand why that is, if you from what you're saying, because you're right. If you're just creating fresh content all the time and thinking of lots of different ways, and yet people aren't seeing it, there doesn't really seem a lot of point to that. Whereas if you're taking a high quality, high value piece of content and then doing more with it, that would make a lot more sense.
Exactly. I mean, I'll take this podcast example, right? Because, in here, there might be none, but there might be some really good sound bites. There might be 5, 10, mostly probably uttered from your mouth, but, it might be good sound bites in here that, there's 10 posts in that alone waiting, right? So, to me, it feels like in a lot of instances, people are like, I want to get some content done, tick it off the list, one and done, off we go. Yeah. But the kind of half-life of that content is actually much longer.
So there's some good future stuff. All right, look, Andy, I've got some reasonably quick fire questions for you, where I want your opinion on certain things. These are questions that we've asked everybody else on each of the episodes. So your answers will be compared and contrasted and ranked as to where you are in our industry. Okay.
Oh God. I'll be at the bottom then.
No pressure. Let's ask you these questions. All right. Now, you've got lots of opinions on stuff, and you see a lot of people. Who's killing it in marketing right now?
Oh, that's a great question. Slack.
Why is that?
They drive 108 million new visits to their website every single day. Unflipping believable. And their organic strategy is just on point. Anyone just check out Slack. What they do from a Medium and YouTube perspective is phenomenal. They're really good at making stuff consistent across multiple channels. Like certainly around like their help guides and business growth tips. Their podcast has been an incredible success. Great example of not being everywhere, repurposing stuff across multiple formats and killing it.
Okay, let's go and check out Slack. All right. Best technology that you're using at the moment?
Ooh, great question. I'd probably say at the moment is Intercom, which is our kind of live chat / customer service tool. We couldn't have grown this business without it.
Why do you like it so much?
Because the whole notion of like bots, people being able to get that information as quickly as possible. So when anyone's using Content Cow, little chat bubble in the bottom right that says, how can I help you? And someone's like, oh, I need to know how to post to Instagram, and the bot's going to suggest them some frequently asked, some replies to that or potential articles, or they could just chat to us directly. But the consumerization of work software is real. So people, our customers essentially like consumers at work. So people expect a ridiculous level of service, basically. So,
right.
That allows us to reply to people. Our average reply time is under an hour for anyone, and that's not bad with 25,000 people using us.
No, quite brilliant. Okay. All right. So that's technology. What about podcasts? Do you listen to podcasts?
I do indeed.
Okay. What's your favorite podcast that you listen to at the moment?
Yeah. So I'm a loser. I'm a complete car nerd. So it's a Formula One podcast called Beyond the Grid, and really well produced. Great guests, but I'm a Formula One nerd. So
is it done by somebody famous, or is it an official F1 podcast?
It's an official F1 podcast done by a journalist of Formula One. So fantastic rapport with the guests, and basically an insight into racing drivers' lives that you would never have known before. So
right. So behind the scenes kind of stuff. So it feeds your nerdness.
Feeds my nerdness and just makes me cry that I never became a racing driver, basically.
Oh. Yeah. I'm happy with that. Not that you didn't become a racing driver, but the suggestion, because we don't need any more marketing podcasts, do we? All right. Advertising. Give me a great ad that you've seen, TV, radio, or whatever.
Yes. So I wouldn't say it's. Can I do a social ad?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, cool. Monday.com's ads, of which everyone in the world will see Monday's ads. They're ludicrously simple and articulate the product in the quickest way possible. It's a really similar proposition, to how we would like to see Content Cal articulated. And, they're one of the fastest growing SaaS businesses at the moment. And it's they've got a lot to thank those ads for.
Yeah, I see them a lot. Okay. They're everywhere. Right. You're going to be at MarketEd Live in Nottingham in a couple of weeks. Why should someone bother to come and see us?
A lot of what we've spoken about today, which is marketing, this is broader marketing. This isn't just social. Social is one element of distribution, overarching marketing strategy, and thinking about everything you do, about how you talk about your business through multiple channels and looking at it across your whole funnel is absolutely critical. Just thinking about social means you miss 75% of the opportunity.
Cool. All right. And if people are interested in you or the product, Content Cal, the business, whatever, apart from coming to see you at MarketEd Live, because you'll be there, how can people get in touch with you?
Website contentcal.io. Follow us on Twitter at contentcal_io. And otherwise come to MarketEd Live, chat to us there. And I think that's probably it.
Cool. Okay. Well, it's been a pleasure to talk to you, Andy. Thanks so much for being on the podcast today. I can't wait to see you in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, you too, mate. Thanks so much for having me on.
Well, that's all for this episode of MarketEd Not Live. If you've enjoyed today's show, there is always a call to action on these things, and it's simply this. We want you to leave us a review on the podcast platform of your choice, help spread the word about this and about the event as well. MarketEd Live 2019, taking place on Monday the 30th of September. Remember that our event brings together experts from all marketing disciplines. As Andy just said, it's not just about one, it's about multiple things. So if marketing is your thing in any way, we need to see you there. Visit marketed.live for all the info on speakers, travel options, accommodation. Read the blog post from your fellow attendees and speakers. And until next time, we'll see you.